Hey, what if this greenback, Benjamin Franklin's, whatever you want to call the US dollar, what if it was no longer the world's most favorite currency? What if that happened? Well, it could. If you look at all the BRICS nations, and I'm going to get into what that is in a little bit. If you look at all of these different economies getting together, could it spell the end of that mighty greenback USD? Or is it just all media hype and sensationalizing news and fear-mongering during a political cycle? Let's get into it and debunk the myths and actually find out what some of the truths are behind this so you don't have to worry too much. The US dollar has been the cornerstone of almost all monetary stability globally speaking. 60% of all the foreign reserves out there operate on the US dollar. So why is it important for the US in general? Well, because the US dominates the world with this currency, we're able to borrow money against it whenever we want and quickly and easily. We can put on financial sanctions against anybody out there that's using the US dollar. We don't like you. Hey, you don't want to promote democracy? Hey, you don't want our liberal views? Guess what? What we're going to do? If you don't recognize all the different groups of people out there that want to identify with this, that, cats, dogs, mice, whatever it is, then we just pull the strings and lay down some financial sanctions, right? The other thing is that it helps us dominate in real estate, with the military, all of those kind of things. So it's really been a mechanism for U.S. foreign policy as well as our dominance in the business world. And quite frankly, the military as well. So can this de-dollarization, if you will, happen? Well, a lot of developing nations that have been colonized, nations that have gone through horrific, histories with both Europe and the United States are starting to come around and develop their economies. And some of them have flourished into pretty big economies. They're getting together and saying, hey, we got options, right? We got options. We can do unilateral, bilateral agreements with other countries, even within our own regions. And so a lot of developing countries are getting together and saying, do we really need that colonial feel of the US dollar? Do we really need somebody else controlling our economy? So they have this group called BRICS right now, which is Brazil, Russia, India, and China, Chindia, however you want to call it, and South Africa. They've gotten together and saying, you know what? We might form alliances and we might have our own shit, if you will. So if you look at world history, whoever controlled the currencies were most likely the superpowers. So that's not hard to venture off on who those people were. Like France, for example, from the 1720s to 1815, they were a dominant force. They went around the world. I mean, everyone from Haiti to a bunch of countries in Africa are still paying the French over shit they did and controlled all the way back then. So the franc was the dominant currency. And then from 1815 to 1920, it was good old Great Britain and the Queen and the royals and all of that. And you can put together the fact that they colonized the majority of the world as well. And they were the currency of choice. So it didn't matter if you were in Nigeria or India or wherever else, the Brits had that controlling currency. And then guess what happened after 1940? 1944 to present day, good old Uncle Sam, the United States is the dominant currency of choice now. According to the Bretton Woods Agreement, that was an agreement that was formed that the United States would be the catch-all, cure-all currency. So now the U.S. is the superpower of the world reserve currency for a couple of different reasons. You obviously got a very stable economy, so there's stability involved with that. It's getting used for investments throughout the world, whether it's treasuries or securities or real estate. And then it also gives the US the ability to buy oil and sometimes even push the oil prices around a little bit, right? So is the US dollar really going to go away? So let's look at that. The US dollar, obviously, just like any other currency, it fluctuates. So there might be a bit of opportunity for it to go away if it fluctuates too low, right? And then you've got a decrease in global dollar holdings, what countries are utilizing to buy and purchase goods. That's kind of going down. So you've got the fluctuation of the dollar, and then you've got global US dollar holdings going downward. And then a lot of countries are coming up trying to come up with different alliances to limit their dependency on the US dollar, right? So how fast could it happen where you reach into your wallet, get out a dollar bill, and you can't pay for shit anymore? Before you decide to get rid of all your dollars, let's continue talking on the subject. Listen, the greenback, the AKA dead president, the US dollar, getting devalued has been in discussion for decades sometimes. So it's not a new theory or a new concept. People have been trying to destabilize that dollar, and if they could, they would. They would have done it a long time ago. And sometimes our politics, sometimes our military transgressions and wars are not always popular with everybody, right? And we already know that. It's not even popular at home sometimes. But if it was going to get weakened, I don't think it's going to get weakened within the next 5 years or 10 years. It might take a long time for this to come up and finally bite us in the backside. How long it's going to take, I probably would say it could take up to decades to finally get this going. As world economies are getting stronger and there's growth, but there's a lot of dependency on the United States still. So the US economy, still pretty stable. It's not like it fluctuates back and forth, but there should be some concern on our debt and how much we own foreign countries and how many foreign countries actually own huge pieces of American real estate and American companies. You've got all of that stuff going around, but it's still a stable country economy-wise. And let's face it, the US dollar is still crucial in the world economy. So I don't see it happening at least within a decade or two. Should you worry about it? Should you lose sleep? What should you do? Well, as an investment strategy, make sure you're still doing the basic things, which, you know, my basics is make sure that you are saving a lot of money, things that you can control that are controllable. For example, your savings, your investments, your assets. I would add a lot of hard assets. I would definitely invest in broad index funds. You guys know how much I love index funds. It does a broad range and gives you stability. So go for broad index funds. So index funds that are not just about investing in one sector, but again, as the name implies, a broad scope of commerce. That'll give you a little bit of stability. I'm not so sure about bonds. Bonds are always a good vehicle for stability, but depending on how inflation is doing, you might want to really think about that. And then lastly, you've got gold, precious metals, and commodities, right? And those are always good hedges against the value of paper currency. You know, you got one more thing. You've got this whole cryptocurrency craze going on as well, and everybody wants to use that as a mechanism to disrupt, governments and stuff like that. Eventually, that will have an effect on it as well. So you should think about at least some portion. Don't invest all your nest egg into it, but see how that's moving along, study it. It's about adaptability. I'll just tell you a couple of things. Look, all currency and all empires, if you will, have a time limit on them. And I'm not saying that America is going to split apart and go into civil war and, hide all your dollars, and your dollars will one day be worth like it was during the Civil War, like Confederate money. But all currencies have a life cycle, just like all empires. So understand that, and understand that I don't think anytime soon the dollar is going to get devalued overnight or anything. And then lastly, and be adaptive to change. Be aware of new technologies coming. Be aware of what worldviews are shifting to. Read the market, study the market. Before you invest, do a lot of study, because these are your hard-earned dollars. If you want content like this that's hard-hitting, easy to understand, no bullshit, then go ahead and like, subscribe, and follow me for more. And I put out a whole lot of content across other platforms as well, so look out for me. I'll talk to you soon.